There is a feeling that most people carry so constantly, they have stopped noticing it is there. It sits just underneath the surface of ordinary days. It shows up in quiet moments, when the noise of the day stops and the room goes still. It is the feeling that something is missing, that the silence around you means something it probably does not mean, that being in a room by yourself is somehow evidence of a problem. Most people call this loneliness. But what if a significant portion of what you have been calling loneliness is not actually loneliness at all? What if it is something else entirely? Something the Matrix taught you to mislabel, so that it would feel like a wound instead of what it actually is. Here is the distinction that almost no one makes clearly enough. Being alone is a physical condition. It simply means that, in a given moment, you are not in the presence of other people. That is all it means. It carries no inherent emotional content. It is not good or bad, painful or pleasant by itself. It is simply a description of physical circumstance. Loneliness is something completely different. Loneliness is an interpretation. It is the meaning you assign to being alone. Specifically, the meaning that says being alone is evidence that you are unwanted, forgotten, or somehow deficient in a way that other people, with their full social lives, are not. Those two things are not the same. But the Matrix has spent a very long time making sure you treat them as if they are. Think about the last time you were genuinely alone, not distracted, not busy, just actually present in your own company. What did you feel? For most people, the honest answer is some version of discomfort, a restlessness, an urge to reach for a phone, or turn on a screen, or find some way to fill the space. Not because the space was actually painful, but because the Matrix has trained you to treat silence as something that needs to be fixed. From the time you were young, aloneness was framed as a problem. The child who plays alone is the one people worry about. The adult who spends a weekend by themselves is the one friends check in on. The message, delivered so consistently, it became invisible, was that being alone is a symptom of something wrong, something missing, something that needs to be corrected. But here is what gets lost in that framing. Some of the most significant things that have ever happened in human history happened in solitude. Every major spiritual encounter recorded across thousands of years of human testimony happened to someone who was alone. Not surrounded by a crowd, not in the middle of a busy social life, alone, in a quiet place, present enough to receive something that could not have arrived any other way. The Matrix does not want you to know this, because a person who is comfortable in their own company is a person who is much harder to control. You cannot sell things to someone who is content in silence. You cannot redirect someone whose sense of self does not depend on constant external validation. So the Matrix developed a very specific solution to the problem of solitude. It made solitude feel identical to loneliness. It blurred the lines so completely that most people cannot feel the difference between choosing to be alone and being abandoned, between quiet that is restoring something in you and quiet that is evidence of rejection, between a season of necessary solitude and a life that has been left behind. The mechanism is simple. Every time you are alone, the Matrix runs the same interpretation in the background. This means something is wrong. This means no one wanted to be here. This means you are less than the people whose lives look fuller, louder, and more populated than yours. And the cruelest part of this mechanism is what it does to the solitude itself. Even when you are in a season of aloneness that is actually good for you, that is producing something in you, building something in you, restoring something in you, the loneliness interpretation poisons it. It takes a space that was meant to be generative and fills it with noise. Not the noise of other people, but the noise of the story. The matrix is running about what the quiet means. So you are physically alone, but you are not actually present in the solitude, because the whole time you are arguing with the interpretation of it, defending yourself against the verdict that the empty room has already delivered. This is what manufactured loneliness actually looks like from the inside. It is not just the absence of people. It is the presence of a story, a running narrative that says the absence of people means you are not worth being around, that the quiet in your life is proof of something deficient in you, that the people who seem to have fuller lives are somehow more valid, more chosen, more deserving of connection than you are. That story is not truth. It is a program. It was installed so gradually, through so many small messages from so many different directions, that by the time you were old enough to question it, it felt like your own voice. So here is what needs to happen. And it is not a complicated thing, but it is a real one. The voice that tells you being alone means being unwanted needs to be identified as what it actually is. Not your voice, not a truth about your life. A program running in the background, one that was never installed by anyone who had your actual interests in mind. Because here is what is actually true about your solitude. Whatever form it has taken, however long it has lasted, it was not only an absence. Something was present in it, something that could not have been present any other way. And the first step toward accessing what that was is separating the physical fact of being alone from the emotional verdict of being lonely. Think about what your relationship with solitude would look like if the loneliness interpretation had never been installed. If you had grown up understanding that being alone is simply a state, neutral, neither good nor bad, until you assign meaning to it. If you had been taught that silence is not an indictment, that a quiet life is not a lesser life, that the number of people around you at any given moment has nothing to do with your value or your belonging, you would move through solitude completely differently. You would be able to sit in a quiet room and actually be there, not performing okayness for no one, not fighting the silence, not filling every gap with noise to escape the verdict you were taught the silence delivers. And here is the spiritual dimension of this that rarely gets addressed directly. The presence that is available to you in solitude, the thing that can only be accessed in quiet, that gets crowded out by noise and activity and the constant performance of being around other people, that presence is real. It is not metaphorical. It is not a coping mechanism or a way of making peace with circumstances you cannot change. It is an actual presence, one that has been trying to reach you in the quiet for longer than you realize, and that the loneliness interpretation has been drowning out every time the room goes still. The solitude you have been surviving was never meant to be only survived. It was meant to be inhabited, entered into fully, with the loneliness interpretation set aside, or at least questioned, long enough to notice what else is there when the noise of that story goes quiet. This does not mean the ache of genuine human connection is not real, or that wanting people in your life is somehow wrong. That desire is real, and it is valid, and it matters. But underneath that desire, underneath the layer of the story the matrix runs, there is something steadier, something that has been present in every quiet room you have ever sat in, regardless of whether you noticed it. So the next time you find yourself alone, in whatever form that takes for you right now, try something different before you reach for the phone or the screen or anything else designed to fill the space. Sit with it for a moment longer than is comfortable, not to punish yourself and not to prove something, just long enough to separate the physical fact of the empty room from the story the matrix runs about what it means. Ask yourself, is this actually loneliness? Or is this simply quiet? And I have been taught that quiet requires an explanation. Because when you actually separate those two things, when you let being alone be what it is, without the loneliness verdict attached to it, something in the room changes. Not the room itself, not your circumstances, but the quality of your presence in it. The way you occupy your own life. The way you relate to the quiet instead of fighting it. And the way the quiet, once you stop arguing with it, begins to offer something it could never offer, while you were too busy defending yourself against what you thought it meant. That is the shift. Not dramatic, not loud, but real and available to you in the very next quiet moment you have, if you choose to meet it differently than you have before. You were not built for constant noise. You were not designed to require the presence of other people every moment in order to be okay. You were built with an interior life, a depth of self that exists independently of who is or is not in the room with you. And that interior life was meant to be inhabited, not escaped. The matrix convinced you it was empty. It is not. It has been waiting for you to come home to it, in the quiet, in the stillness, in the very spaces you have been most afraid to occupy alone. If this reached you the way it was meant to, write this where you can see it. I am never truly alone. Type it in the comments. Not as a denial of the ache, but as a truth you are choosing to hold alongside it. That the quiet around you is not as empty as the Matrix taught you to believe. And if you have not already, subscribe, because this story is still being told, one chapter at a time, and you are not meant to miss what comes next. Until the next one, awakened choosers.